Hello and welcome to Bulimia Sucks. I'm your host, Kate Hudson-Hall, and thank you so much for listening. This is a platform for people to share relatable and uplifting and inspiring conversations based on bulimia, anorexia, but all sorts of other different eating disorders because there's so many out there. And episodes includes talking with professionals who work with people with an eating disorder, who may have had their own struggles with their eating disorder and sharing their journey. And then we also talk to people who have overcome eating disorders, and then people who are actually going through that process, that recovery journey, and sharing their personal stories and their difficult journeys and their steps taken into their recovery. So as a therapist, I've created a free Bulimia Sucks course to help you get started on your recovery pathway. And so if you're interested, if you go to my website, katehudson-hall.com, where you can sign up for a form, and it's all on the homepage. And the other exciting thing is that I've now finished my book on helping people with anxiety. And there's many different ways and tools and techniques to be able to do this. So I'm excited about that, and it's with the editor. So I'm waiting for that to come back, and then it's still quite a long process to get it out there. But I'm thinking about calling it Anxiety Hacks. And the subtitle would be Techniques, Tools, and Tips to Calmness. So it'd be great to hear what you think. So let me know. Let me know what you think of that name. Now it's very exciting. So I've got a wonderful guest here, and her name is Jemma Haythorne. Jemma is a certified nutrition and health coach with Inspire Wellness Australia, who follows the weight neutral health at every size approach. That means no weight loss diets, no diet culture, and no worries what the body looks like or what size it is. She believes in eating intuitively and enjoying foods that put a big smile on your face. Oh, I love that. So Jemma bounced from diet to diet, hating her body, and spent all of her mental energy thinking about food, which is so common. She was constantly feeling frustrated and wondering why achieving a healthy body seems so out of reach when she just tried so hard, but she overcame this and believes that you can too. So she's here today to share with us her journey of how she's done this and how she helps other people to follow her path. So Jemma, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you on.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Yay! Yay! So thank you. So Jemma, so tell me, let's start with your journey, with your patterns of eating and what happened, and then how you overcame this.
I think I had a pretty long journey of struggling with my body, probably from about the time I was 10 years old. I think by the time I guess just before you kind of hit puberty, I was always a very small, skinny child, I suppose, and then hit puberty and shot up to be probably the tallest kid in my class. And when your body starts changing, I suppose I started getting a bit uncomfortable with myself. And it's something that I struggled with over the years, up and down. It kind of went through quite a lot of iterations. We could be here all day if I told you about it in detail. So I will give you the highlights. But basically, I went through a period when I was in year 12, so my last year of school, where honestly, I wanted an eating disorder in year 12 because I thought that will make me skinny, which now I look back and think that's horrific. That's a horrible thing to want. But as a teenager, that was actually what I wanted.
Yeah. And I think, you were saying that when our bodies start to change, that can be a real shock to the system. And you think, my gosh, what's happening here? I'm eating how I was eating before quite often. And then all of a sudden your body starts to change shape and you think, what's going on here? I remember thinking that, thinking, oh my gosh, because I was like you, a real skinny little bean. And then all of a sudden it started to change. And I was like, oh gosh, I've got to do something about this.
Yeah. And not knowing what to do about that when you're, 10 years old kind of thing. What are you supposed to do? You eat what mum and dad give you. I know that getting fixated on food started around that age because I'd realized there was a connection. I just didn't know what to do about it. I knew that I loved food, but I also got the idea that maybe food's not being so helpful in this side of things at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so what, age 16, that's when you became really aware of like, my gosh, I've got to do something about this.
I think probably when I was about 16, 17 years old, I started trying to do things about it, but I had no concept really of what health was. I think I had the idea that I wanted to take care of my health and wanted to be skinny. And to me, those were the same thing. So I would do things like, just eat an apple for lunch at school because I thought that was being healthy, which of course would then come home from school and be starving. And I used to, which my mum, when I tell this story, gets a little bit horrified, but I used to work at a supermarket and my favorite food is potato. It's always been potato. But I used to buy big 2-kilo bags of potatoes and then I'd come home from school and make myself sort of 3 baked potatoes with cheese and sour cream and butter and wouldn't tell my mum. I would hide the bags of potatoes under my bed. So I think that's probably when things started getting not so great, let's say, where now I look back and go, wow, that was not okay. But at the time, I knew there was something wrong with it, which is why I was hiding the food, but I didn't quite realize exactly what was going on, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah.
And that just kind of spiraled, I suppose, went up and down over the years. I would go through periods where I was really focusing on trying to be healthy or trying to be smaller, and then periods where I didn't care, didn't want to pay attention to it, and ended up in a place where I was really trying to lose weight, really trying to be healthy, and went through every diet under the sun, basically. Every single thing you can think of, I have
Which
tried.
I think so many people do. It's always striving for that next diet. And you think, oh, this one is going to work. And, this is the ultimate. And then you restrict somehow, whatever they tell you to do. And then, it only lasts for a time and then you fall back into your old patterns.
Exactly. They work until they don't. And I absolutely went through those patterns where I would think, I found the thing that's amazing and would tell everyone about it. And then it would stop working and I would be off the wagon again and it stopped working. So then it was on to the next thing and the next thing. But of course they get more restrictive as you keep going. You just end up with a smaller and smaller list of foods that you're allowed to eat or you think are safe to eat. And for me, that reached a peak when I was working in a gym. I'd done, very much focused on macronutrients and everything and was helping out with the food coaching at the gym, which probably shouldn't have been. I had no food qualification, was not a personal trainer. I was sales and marketing, but was helping out. Won't name the gym. But yeah, basically kind of got to the point where it was really unhealthy. It was obsessive. And I ended up with depression, anxiety, and being diagnosed with binge eating disorder. And it was just kind of when I hit the lowest point, I suppose.
Yeah. And then what made you decide to actually, figure this out?
I think it was when I hit, and I can remember this so clearly, my kind of lowest point, I suppose. I wasn't really letting on to anyone. Everyone thought I was really healthy. Everyone thought that I was this, person to kind of look up to in the things that I was doing, because I was very much hiding my eating disorder from everyone. Didn't tell my family. My family lived interstate from me, so I could hide it quite easily. But my mum had sent me a hamper, like a gift hamper for my birthday with all my favorite foods in it. Beautiful. I was very excited. And I one night binged on and ate every single thing in the hamper. And I felt so, so guilty. Like I felt awful that my mum had done this beautiful, nice thing for me, sent me all my favorite foods, and I just wiped them out in one go. Felt depressed. That was the last time I sort of really thought about hurting myself as well. And for me, my mum lost a child before I was born, and I didn't want her to lose another one. So that was kind of the point that I realized I need help. I need to get out of this. This isn't actually okay. This isn't normal. And I need someone to help me get out of this.
Yeah. And when you were growing up, was there much talk about weight and, food behaviors?
Not outwardly, like not to the extent that I know that a lot of other people have dealt with, more just the little things, which I think most of us heard growing up, mum saying occasionally, oh, I shouldn't eat this much chocolate kind of thing. My mum never actively dieted around us or anything like that. So I know that I was lucky there, but little things like that, family members talking about maybe their body shape or things like that, saying they needed to lose weight. And I suppose, especially growing up, in the 90s and early 2000s, it was very much in the media and focused on those kinds of things. So I think not directly in terms of, I never got put on a diet or anything like that, never had my body size criticized or anything from a family member, but it was still there. It was still something I paid attention to. And I grew up with two younger brothers, and I can still remember, which now, it seems like a silly thing to remember, but we'd go to McDonald's, and if my brothers got to have a medium meal and I had a small meal, I thought that was so unfair because I'm the oldest, but it was, girls don't need as much food kind of thing. It was like, but I do need as much food. So I became fixated on it. It's just the little things, I think.
And so what was your, that point where you actually thought, right, okay, well, what am I going to do here? I've got to make some good positive changes here.
Yeah, that day basically with the binging on that was my real moment that I realized I needed to change. It's not to say that everything was all uphill from there, but that was the moment that I sort of recognized that I needed to change and wanted to do something about it. So sought some external help.
So then so what sort of help did you reach out for?
So, well, first of all, I was actually seeing a psychologist by that point for depression and anxiety, but I hadn't mentioned any of the food stuff to her because I thought it was I don't know, I just thought it was kind of normal. Like, it's normal to struggle with things, but also I'm quite ashamed of it and I don't want to tell anyone about it.
Yeah.
So I remember I went into my next appointment and said, I thought about hurting myself on the weekend, and we talked about that. And she said, what triggered it? And I told her, and she said, sounds like, maybe food might be a bit of a thing for you. We sort of talked about the food. She's like, right, okay. That was when I sort of, the binge eating diagnosis kind of came around after that.
And what was the trigger that you told her at the time?
For me, I just was, everything was triggering me at that time. I just felt like I needed to be different all the time. I was always, I think working in the gym environment wasn't super helpful for me. There was probably a lot of, which for a place that you would think would be super healthy was probably a bit unhealthy. So I was kind of constantly triggered with that kind of thing at work, and feeling like when I got the job at the gym, I thought, I don't think they'll hire me because they'll think I'm too fat to work at a gym. I was a size 12 Australian, which I believe is the same as the UK. I was a size 12. I wasn't, but I thought that, oh no, I won't be able to work in a gym because I'm too big. And I always felt like I'd be judged by members or trainers or anything like that, which no one ever did. It was all very much me projecting my own insecurities onto them. But yeah, that environment probably wasn't the most helpful for me. That was what really kind of made things take a really downturn.
Yeah. And then how did you take that forward with the psychologist?
We worked together on, accepting, I suppose, other ways of handling, when I was struggling with the depression and anxiety symptoms. We talked about, I remember there was a lot of sort of validation, I suppose, that what was going on, while it's not normal as such, doesn't happen to everyone, but it's not just me. I'm not the only person feeling this way, which I think for anyone who struggled with that type of thing knows how lonely it can be, and you think you're the only person. So there was a lot of that kind of thing, but I like to say I'm a bit of a nerd. I love learning. So at that point I was reading everything I could get my hands on, trying to find ways to get out of it, really trying to learn about a whole lot of different things. And really learn to be kind to myself, I suppose, was a big one as well. Working on my self-worth and my values, they were big things.
Yeah. And it's learning to be kind to yourself and having the tools to be able to do that. Because we
Absolutely.
just, in that sort of situation, you just give yourself such a hard time all the time.
Yeah, 24/7, constant cycle of being mean to yourself.
Yeah.
That was definitely where I was at.
So if you could turn back the clock to that younger you, say at age 16, now what would you say to that younger you?
Like I said before, I just wanted to be skinny. That was my whole motivation, really. I wanted to be smaller. So I think I would tell myself that nothing's going to change if you do get smaller. Nothing's going to change when you lose weight. You're not magically going to have a great life. Everything's not going to fix itself. What you need to do is do the inner work to find happiness. Changing your body won't bring you happiness. So if you're looking for happiness, you need to work on what's going on in your mind rather than changing what's on the outside. That would probably be the thing I think I needed to hear then. And took me 16 years to learn it, but we got there.
Yeah. And I think that's really important, isn't it? Because we do think, oh, if we can, reduce our weight somehow, then we will be happy. Everybody else seems to be happy when that's not true.
No, and I think everyone thought I was happy, but no, obviously not.
So what advice would you give to somebody that is struggling with an eating disorder?
I mean, apart from the obvious, get help, because that should always be the first thing, I think. Speak to a professional about it. But one of the biggest things that helped me was not attaching it to my identity anymore or making it part of my identity, which is, I think I read it in a book or something like that. And it was one of those things that really kind of hit home with me. So I didn't classify myself as a binge, or I stopped classifying myself as a binge eater, and wouldn't say, oh, I'm a binge eater or I'm someone with binge eating disorder. I would binge and I'd say, okay, that's something I did. It's not who I am. And for me, that really helped to, detach it from my identity and separate it from myself and say, it's something that I did. Yeah, it's something I did, but it's not who I am. That was something that really helped.
Yeah, because people are not their behaviors, whatever that may be. If it's an alcoholic, that's the person's habit, that's the person's behavior. That's not actually the person.
Exactly. And that was like a switch flipped in my head when I kind of got my head around that. That really, really helped me.
And how did you take that forward?
It was a lot of kind of changing my self-talk, I suppose. So when I would have that experience, it was almost like repeating affirmations to myself. This isn't who I am. It's just what I did. This isn't who I am. It's just what I did. And did, not what I do as well. Like, it's in the past. I knew it probably wasn't going to be the last time, but I tried to tell myself that it was and convince myself that, it's something that I've done. But yeah, again, just over and over and over, repeating it to myself.
I mean, affirmations are amazing to kind of reprogram that part of your mind.
Absolutely.
And it's repeating them over and over again. With my clients, I say, okay, so let's create a good positive affirmation. And then I want you to repeat this 100 times a day. And then they look at me going, oh, what, 100 times? But it's working with your unconscious mind, and your unconscious mind goes, well, why does she keep repeating that? Oh, this is the direction that she wants me to help her go in.
Yeah, I do the same thing with my clients. It's my favorite thing to talk about. And exactly that. They look terrified when you say 100 times a day. Like, what do you mean? That's so much.
Yeah. But then if you break it down into blocks of 20 or something, it's not that much.
Yeah, I still use affirmations to this day for so many different things. And I record myself saying them, play it while I'm driving over and over. And it's like, get it into my brain.
Yeah, that's really good. So you mentioned about your mum. I just wonder, what were the other reasons for you to make this good positive change?
I think I was just sick of only being able to think about that. I had no room in my life for anything else, like nothing, because I was constantly thinking about and talking. I feel very sorry for anyone who knew me for that period of my life, because I think it was all I could talk about was food or bodies or exercise or anything like that. It was all I could think about. Like, I was in a job that I didn't love, but I had no capacity to even consider doing something else. I had no idea what I wanted to do because I just didn't feel worthy, I suppose, of doing anything more with my life. Even when I started studying nutrition and health coaching, because I thought, well, if I study it, they'll have the right answers for me. They'll have the right way to eat and everything. And I ended up having to take time off from that while I was kind of going through therapy and in that quite dark place, because I had no brain space. I couldn't do it. I couldn't focus on it in any possible way. So that was probably another big reason for moving forward. I'm someone who's always been quite motivated and being quite driven, but I wanted to be driven by something else. And I wanted to be motivated to do something else with my life rather than just think about food and how much I want it and how much I can't have it and how much I shouldn't have it. And all of those other things.
What's the next thing I'm going to eat? Because it's just so overwhelming. That feeling of that you can't think of anything else. Just, when the next binge is. It's just so powerful and distressing. So working with your psychologist, and did you have any other help?
I had a friend who was going through a similar thing to me at the same time, which in some ways was helpful because we could support each other. We could pull each other up if we were using language that wasn't helpful or things like that. But looking back, in some ways, it also probably wasn't very helpful, because if she, took a few steps backwards, I also took a few steps backwards. And I know in vice versa as well. If I wasn't doing the best, she probably wasn't doing the best. So in some ways it was good. In some ways it wasn't great. It took me quite a long time to admit to my mum. I didn't want to tell my mum what was going on. But with the encouragement from my therapist, I did. And that was really positive as well, because we could have conversations about, what language is helpful for me. Because, she would always talk about how proud she was that I was so healthy and I was so good at balance and things like that. And while it wasn't helpful for me, which of course she had no way of knowing, because then I felt like I had to live up to that and I had to be that person, but I was failing at being that person. So it was great to actually be able to tell her that. And so she could kind of change her language around me as well. And she's the most supportive person ever. So it was great that I told her. Very much had that family support, and my brothers, who also live interstate from me, got on board as well and would be supportive in the best way they knew how. So
yeah. And I think also, when somebody's ready to speak to their family or friends about what they're going through, it's a huge step, but it's a real positive step forward. And it's thinking about how they can help you, because they don't know how to help you. So you need to tell them how they can help you forward with this as best way possible, like you say, with the language.
Yeah, because people just don't know. And it took a lot of kind of going back and forth of, mum would say something and I'd say, oh no, that's not helpful. And she'd get a bit, but what do you mean? Like, it's me being nice. And I'm like, no, I understand that. I know the intention, but intention and impact are different things. And the impact on me at the moment's not the most helpful.
Yeah. And so the reasons were to recover. So, because of your mother. Mm-hmm. And what were the other reasons?
The brain space, getting back the brain space, wanting to do more with my life, and not wanting to have a shorter life, because that's probably the path that would have ended if I'd kept going like I was going.
So how did you take that forward?
That was where I was reaching out for people for help, basically, and getting support. And like I said, I'm someone who kind of puts in the work. So I committed myself to recovery like I do to work, like I do to everything in my life. So I think I was a lot luckier than a lot of other people in that, obviously recovery is not linear. It wasn't easy or anything like that. But I think I probably managed to get myself out of it easier than some other people have. So I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful that I did have the support.
Oh, and why would that be? Because you're very motivated, and you had the support. And what were the other reasons?
It's a good question, actually. I think I was just lucky, really. I mean, I feel like we all have different experiences, and that was just kind of the experience that was dealt to me, the hand that was dealt to me, I guess, that I did find it easier than some other people. I've got some family members who've struggled with eating disorders as well, and still one of them to this day struggles with it, 25 years later or something like that. So I don't think I did anything necessarily any differently to, the people that I know, but yeah, I guess it just worked for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And so you had your psychologist, and did you have a nutritionist, or I suppose because you worked in the gym, you had a lot of knowledge anyway?
No, well, I was studying nutrition and health coaching. So I think that I had too much knowledge about the nutrition stuff, because it felt so like I had to stick to all these rules. And there were, like I said, tried every diet under the sun. There was all the research that I was doing. I mean, reading books and listening to things and everything. There was a lot of conflicting information. It was like I was trying to roll it all into one and just listen to all of the rules from every single diet, except for keto. I never got into keto because, like I said, my favorite food is potato. But yeah, I didn't end up working with a dietitian or anything like that, because I actually, my cousin's a dietitian. And when she knew that I was struggling, I'd admitted to her I was struggling, she sent me in the mail the book Intuitive Eating by Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch, I think it is. And that book was probably one of the biggest turning points for me.
Okay.
That was, learning to eat intuitively, or learning about intuitive eating and starting to practice that was massive for me. And in the study that I was doing, the nutrition and health coaching study, they brought out a module called the non-diet approach, which very much ties in with intuitive eating. So learning about those two things at once and realizing there kind of is another way. I don't have to be on diets forever. I don't have to stick to rules forever. That was a big game changer for me, a big turning point.
Yeah. And so for the listeners, so could you explain what intuitive eating is?
So intuitive eating mostly comes down to listening to your body and eating what your body needs in that moment. But I think when people hear what my body needs, they kind of either go two ways. They think it means only eating sort of for fuel, the exact amount of protein, fats, carbs, whatever it is, or they think it means eating whatever I want at any time. So pizza and McDonald's and ice cream for every single meal. But intuitive eating is about allowing all foods and recognizing that there's no good or bad foods. Food is just food.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we know if we restrict ourselves and say, right, I'm never going to have that, have a piece of chocolate cake, that you'll go around and eat everything else in the kitchen and then eventually eat that piece of chocolate cake.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the whole premise of intuitive eating.
Yeah.
Is eat the
so
chocolate cake.
It's not restricting yourself, but of course, all within reason.
Yeah. But the idea with intuitive eating is that your body knows what it needs. And once you have that initial kind of, at the beginning, when I threw out the rules, I did go crazy on the pizza and Oreos and all of that kind of stuff. But if your body doesn't want to do that, our bodies don't actually, they need nutrients. They want vegetables. So eventually it kind of just evens out. So that's a big part of it, that you don't need to kind of even focus on balance or, within reason necessarily, because your body kind of automatically does that. Like I love chocolate. I love chocolate so much. But I recently, we had Easter a couple of weeks ago. I found Easter chocolate from last year that was still sitting in my little bunny ornament next to my TV, because I just didn't want it over the year. Every time I'd see it, I go, oh no, I'm not in the mood for chocolate actually. And that's unheard of. I could never have done that before. So that's a big part of intuitive eating, is listening to what your body wants and getting rid of that restrictive mindset.
Yeah, it's making that mind and body connection and tuning into how hungry you are, and whether you actually have whether you're actually hungry, because yes, it's 1 o'clock, it's time for lunch, but if you've just had a muffin or something like an hour before, you're not going to be hungry. So it's really tuning in and learning how to only eat when you're hungry, and then being aware of the eating slowly and consciously, isn't it? And enjoying the flavors and the tastes, really slowing your eating down.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially at the beginning, that's so important. I think once you're further down the path, it becomes easy. You know, you don't have to be super mindful all the time because your body's more used to it. And like you said, you're more in tune with your body by that point. So I think when I first started, it was very much no devices, no TV while I eat, sit and focus on the food.
Yeah, and that's, that's good, because that's a good grounding, a good learning, isn't it?
Absolutely. And then, but now, I had lunch on the couch just before because I don't need to pay attention because my body just tells me automatically now. I don't need to be concentrating on it. Body's like, yep, I'm full. That's enough. You're done. So you can kind of get to that point where you don't have to focus. Because honestly, I found that quite exhausting, having to focus on everything all the time and how hungry am I and how full am I. I got a bit sick of it. But eventually you get past that and it's not something you have to do forever.
Yeah, and obviously it depends, how much you move your body to how much food you need.
Yeah, there's so many different factors to it. So many different factors.
Yeah. And so how now, if somebody were to come and see you for help with the binge eating disorder, so how would you approach that and how do you take them forward?
So I don't actually help specifically with binge eating disorder. I'm not qualified to treat eating disorders. Right. So to be honest, if someone came to me with binge eating disorder, I would refer them on to a great therapist. But I do help people who are kind of in the stages before that, who don't have a great relationship with food, recognize something's not okay and that they do need help with food, but they're not quite at that, clinical stage yet, I suppose.
So how would you help them?
So I work with people on generally kind of the principles of intuitive eating. So getting rid of that restrictive mindset and focusing more on what their body needs, exactly like we just spoke about. So focusing on food freedom, so being allowed to eat all foods, getting rid of those food rules, focusing on intuitive eating. And then I do a lot of work to do with body image and confidence and that side of things as well, because I think those two things very much go hand in hand. And as I'm sure you would agree, a lot of that comes down to mindset as well. So
if somebody has is not struggling with their body image, so how would you help them?
Depends on the person and it depends on what they need. But I think, like I said, a lot of it does come back to mindset. So focusing on their beliefs about their body, where did those beliefs come from? Are those beliefs true? What's a better belief that we could implement for you? And how can we embed that belief? So like you were talking about the subconscious mind before, that's something that I talk about pretty much every session, I think, with people, because it all comes down to that, working on, and I think for a lot of people, it's also kind of giving them a bit of the permission slip that you don't need to change your body to be happy, because we're constantly bombarded with the message that we do by society and by the media and everything. So I think for some people, it's just refreshing to hear, actually, that's not what you have to do. And that's one of the first kind of things we really focus in on, that you don't have to, you can be happy in the body you have right now, and then working on just getting there.
Yeah. Amazing. So great. This is really interesting. So how can people find you for help with intuitive eating?
Yeah, so the best place to find me is probably on Instagram. So my handle is at inspire__wellness. And I've also got my website as well, which is just inspirewellnessau.com.au, because I'm Australian based. I am on Facebook as well, but best place is probably Instagram or on my website. I offer free sessions as well to have a chat to people, get to know them, see if we're a good fit. But yeah, always happy to just chat to people about this stuff too. I love talking about it, obviously.
Yeah. So you said, so you do a lot on Instagram.
That's where I tend to connect with people. Yeah. Right. But my coaching, I do one-on-one over Zoom. And I've also got a small group coaching program on confidence and body acceptance as well, which I run we're in round 1 at the moment. So that'll be opening up in the near future sometime.
Good. So is the information for that on your website?
Yeah, on my website and on my Instagram. Yeah, all there.
And then you were saying when we talked before that, so you were doing a lot of information you were putting on Instagram, but then you were like, well, hang on a minute, I'm going to make a podcast. So you have a podcast.
Yes, I do. I do have a podcast as well. So my podcast is called Finding Freedom with Inspire Wellness. And yeah, I talk about all this stuff: food freedom, intuitive eating, body image, confidence, mindset, habits, all the stuff I love, basically.
Yeah, good. And it's on all the major platforms.
It's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts at the moment. Yeah.
Oh, good. And you're going to continue those?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was just saying before, I've started my season break today after season 1, but I'll be back in a couple of weeks, and there's about 30 episodes on there to catch up on anyway. So if someone got through those in 4 weeks, I'd be very impressed.
Yeah, great. Oh, Jemma, thank you. Yeah, so this has been really, well, it's just been great to hear your story and for people to learn from that. And are there any other books that you maybe have read that you could recommend?
Oh gosh, I've read so many books. One would be I won't swear, the Effort Diet.
Yes.
Diet. Yep, Caroline Dooner. That's a good one. Just Eat It is another good one. They're probably the top 3, but intuitive eating is hands down the best one that I would recommend. Hands down. I tell everyone to read that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an excellent one.
Mm,
okay, good. Right. Well, Jemma, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's so helpful, and your genuine constructive information will be super powerful for everybody to help everybody. So beautiful. Thank you.
And thank you.
Yeah, great. So, well, thank you to everybody for listening. And that is the end of the episode. But if you wanted to, share how you feel, or give us a 5-star rating for this podcast, or check it out, or go to Apple iTunes and subscribe so you never miss an episode, and it would be great to hear what you think. So let us know. So that's all for today's episode, and I look forward to speaking to you in the next episode.